Hello and welcome to another episode of 3D Paint. Today we're going to be taking a look at a model that I prepared, and I showed you in my last video how I prepared my models, if they're FDM or resin. This particular one is resin, and today I'm going to show you how to airbrush. I'm going to show you how this basically works. He could be a little bit better. I didn't do the best job. He didn't print exactly correct, but it's still a good practice model and it still looked pretty cool, you know, to put up on a shelf or something like that. It's not a pro piece per se, but I'm going to show you how to airbrush with this one. I figured this would be awesome, and we're going to be using three colors, Vallejo paints like I've been using. We're doing a really dark green, and then we're doing a lighter green, and then a super light green for the highlight. And the way I like to start is I go with the dark, then the lighter of the two, you know, like a mid-tone, and then highlights. And that's how I like to airbrush my models, and I think it comes out pretty good. If you're absolutely brand new at airbrushing, you don't need the best airbrush. I would probably recommend, and I'm going to get one myself, I've been doing research, it's the Iwata Neon. I am a big fan of Iwatas. This airbrush, I got it when I was 16 or 17, 41 now, and this thing still works like a dream. And I paid $130 for this Eclipse airbrush. I would like a gravity feed because it'd be easier with these paints. You know, this is how it was back in my day. You used to put it at the bottom, but I'm using what I got, and I got a little adapter because you don't need to use that much paint. You just click in right there, and that way we could airbrush. I'm going to show you how an airbrush works, and if you're brand new, this is the video for you because I'm going to dumb it down. I'm going to really show you how an airbrush works. Now, the first thing you want to do when you get your airbrush is clean it, and you just unscrew the back here, and you pull out the needle, and you make sure that needle's clean, and you can see mine's not that clean. I'm going to take a little washcloth here and we're going to clean it, and we're going to slip it back in. And I may do a video on maintenance with your airbrush, but this one's just going to be showing you how to airbrush. And you push it all the way in. Don't push it in too hard. Just push it in hard enough so that way you can close this little clamp, and that's what's going to create the action. So when you pull it back, that's what creates the action. It pulls it back. And you just rinse it out and you just put it in here. And you pull it back, and then you push on the front and let go, push on the front and let go. I'm showing you a lot of the old school ways of doing things. My compressor in the background, it's a regular compressor. You want to make sure, my pressure right now is a little under 20 PSI. You want an air compressor that could do 20 PSI. Don't do too high. I used to airbrush a lot when I was younger, and I used to do t-shirts, and I would have the pressure up to 60 PSI. But basically how an airbrush works, we're going to unscrew this little knob right here and take that tip off, and there's a tip there. When you push down, air's coming out. You could adjust the air pressure, but that's how much air pressure is coming out. When you pull back, you'll notice the tip goes in, and that's actually going back and letting more paint go through. And this is considered a two-action airbrush. When you push down, it shoots air. When you push back, it brings the needle back and lets more paint flow through. So that's how we're going to control the paint flow. And I'm going to show you that in action. And I always push back the needle when I put the cap back on. I like the cap on it. It helps it disperse it a little bit. What we're going to do now is we'll load up some paint, shake it really good. This is the Vallejo Vendier Oliver. It's a dark green Vallejo airbrush model paint. And we're going to pour quite a bit of this into this little cup. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to put this into the airbrush. So if we push down on this, nothing comes out. It's just air. But if we pull back just a little bit, you'll see we get some paint. And the farther you go out, the more paint comes out. So you got to kind of control that. The closer you get, the smaller you can get with the airbrush. See? And I like to practice by just doing some lines and getting my distance and flow. So, because if you go too fast, you get splats like that. You don't want that. So we're just doing, and then if we go back, we can mist it. You gotta play with it. You just go on a piece of paper like I'm doing here, and you just keep playing with it, and that's how you control it. So down, shoots the air, going back releases more and more paint, and then you gotta realize your distance is how close you want to get for detail. You get close for detail, you go back for more coverage. It's a cone kind of design, and that's what it's doing. And let's get over to the Hulk and start airbrushing him. We're just doing a base coat here, so we're just going to be spraying him. That's basically what we're going to be doing. So we're going to just spray him with the dark, and we're just going to go in there and start covering him. And I'm going to turn on the exhaust fan and make it a little loud in here, so I apologize for that. So let's go in there and start hitting him. And right now we're just doing a broad airbrush right now. And when you're doing this, you want to constantly be moving. You don't want to get in one spot. You can always go back and recoat them. And if you notice, I'm going darker in the spaces that I think the light would not be hitting, like in between his creases of his muscles and stuff like that. We're gonna try and work it a little bit already, trying to get him, mainly we wanna go dark, but I'm kind of running out of paint, so I'm gonna go a little lighter in certain areas and darker in other areas. We're not really worried about the highlights yet, but this'll kind of help. We're getting those creases, that's another thing we wanna do. And that's a great green, I really love the Vallejo green. And like the top of his foot, leave a little light, because that's where light's gonna be hitting. Underneath his pants, try to go a little darker. You could go just flat colors if you want, but I'm just starting a little bit of the shading because it's naturally not taking the pigment in certain high areas and going into low areas, and that's kind of what we want. And we're not worried about the shorts, we're gonna go back and do that afterwards. Alright, so if you see right there, I got a little bit of spray. That means the tip just needs to be clean. What you're gonna do is unscrew the back, pull this out, and just wipe down buildup that happens on the tip. You should be checking that periodically. It's just a base coat, so I'm not super worried about it. I'm not happy it happened, but it's a practice piece, so it is what it is. So what we're gonna do now is we're just gonna spray off to the side here and just get all those little flakes out. And that's more important as we go on. It's starting to get there. Alright, so now I'm just gonna go around misting him to make sure that we cover up all that white that we might missed, because we don't want him to be too light, because we're gonna lighten it up with other paints. That's just the base coat. We'll put this cup off to the side. We're gonna clean out the airbrush now. And so what I'm doing here is I'm dipping the whole head in, and if you have this type of airbrush, this is how you have to do it. Dip the whole head in, spray it and pull it back, and then push on the front end of it to let it squirt back out. And then we just spray out and clean it. So now that way we're ready for our next color. And what we're gonna do is take out the tip again, pull that out, and wipe it down. Just wipe it down, push it back in. And there you go. We're gonna let him dry for a little bit. I like to give him about 10-20 minutes. You could use a hot air gun to do that. Me personally, I'm not in that much of a rush, so I'm just gonna let him dry au naturel. Been a little bit. The next one we're gonna go with is just the plain old green, and we're gonna add some highlights. And this one, we're gonna need an airbrush thinner because it does need to be thin. And this is their airbrush thinner that I use, Vallejo airbrush thinner. What I like to do is add a little paint. And this one I'm going to be a little sparing because it's just highlights. Okay, squeeze a little paint in there, that's what it looks like. And then we'll take some of the airbrush and we're going to put about 4 drops. 1, 2, 3, 4. Fair amount. It looked like that. Okay, and then we'll take a little mixer and we'll mix it up. And just trying to make it kind of thin. We might have to add more paint to this. So, alright. I think that's pretty good. Let's try it with the airbrush. The airbrush in. And I like to backfloat a little bit. You just put your finger on the airbrush and you backflow a little bit and make bubbles just so it mixes up a little bit more. See if it's spraying nice. Yeah, you want it kind of watery but not too watery. It's something that you got to kind of play with. Go ahead, go for the highlighted areas. And we're going to go away from this a little bit. We don't want to get the parts that we want dark. We want to get the parts that are raised up, like his lats there, part of his shoulder. We want to just try and hit where the sun would hit it. So I'm trying to figure like the sun's coming at him from an angle, and that's what we're going for. So I'm going to hit the tops of his arms, tops of his bicep there, and just lighten him up a little bit. And on his face, we're going to go at a downward kind of motion because I want to keep those dark highlights. Get the bottom of his jaw. Right there, just lightening it up a little bit. It doesn't look like I'm doing much, but it's adding a little more detail. And we don't want to really get under his arms because I want those to be dark. Tops of his legs, tops of his feet, sunlight more. Try and hit some of those muscles in there. Alright, so right in here, I want to fill that in a little bit, right on his abs. And I want to try and get in here a little bit more. I want to emphasize his chest. And I'm just re-hitting some of the areas I re-hit. because I'm going back after it dries and seeing how dark it is. So we're getting it where we want, and we can get in closer and try and get a little more detail, tops of his hands, stuff like that. And I did make this a little too watery now that I'm looking at it, but it's working out really well. So that's the second coat, and we're gonna kind of hit him, just gently hit him from one angle and just gently spray a little bit to lighten everything and smooth everything in. Blend it all in. I'm gonna switch this out now. Clean it. Same technique again. I'm going through, cleaning this off. I'm gonna remove the tip, clean that off, and leave the tip out just a little bit. We're gonna remove the top here, and we're just gonna clean in here real quick. So that way that stays clean. Push this through. All right, and now we're gonna go for the even lighter color. And we don't really have to wait for this to dry because it's drying pretty quick. It looks pretty good. So I'm gonna go with the even lighter color now and see how he's gonna look. Shake this one up. Again, we're gonna have to thin this down, and I'm gonna thin it down just a little bit less this time. So we're gonna put quite a bit in there. We're gonna put 1, 2. Let's mix this up a little bit. I think I like the consistency of like whole milk. Like if you ever dipped a cookie in it and you saw it, like you want a drip like that. I think that's perfect, so I'm gonna go with that. I'm gonna bubble it again, just to make sure it mixed. So now we're gonna go in here and we're gonna highlight major areas. Alright, so now we're gonna start trying to build in the muscle work. And this is where the detail is going to come in, guys. And this is going to be the heavy highlights. It's going to make it look more like skin. So we're re-highlighting what we already did. And I'm just gently hit a little bit on this side for reflective light. The more you do this, the more you'll get used to it. Alright, we're going to clean the tip because this paint is just sticking. Highlight some of that. Yeah, there we go. I like it. Alright, so now we're going to go for his abs. Yeah, I don't know. This stuff excites me. I don't know if it excites you guys, but it excites me. Yeah, that's looking good. I like that. I like that a lot, if I do say so myself. Let's get it up here a little bit. Liking that. Alright, so we got the top part kind of done. Making that striation marks for the pecs. Playing with that a little bit. Let's make it a little brighter right there. Alright. Yeah, I like that. And it's going to dull down once it dries. You'll see that. Loving the way that's coming out. Okay, so now let's go for his legs. Let me clean the tip before I go that route. So we're going to go for the top parts of the muscle. See what I'm doing there? And don't worry about his pants. We're going to get to that. Missed them. Bring it out a little bit. Fade all those parts in now. I'm just going to do a quick mist. Try to blend everything in. The darks and the highlights. That way it all kind of looks like one color. We want some harsh, but we want to kind of blend it all in. So I'm blending it. I'm blending. Don't go too crazy with the blending. Just enough to kind of give it all one consistent color, but showing highlights. Really liking the way that's coming out. I think that's working out really well. Alright, so the beauty part of this is we can knock some of this highlighting down if you want to. I'm pretty happy with the way it came out, but if you're not, you can go back over with the darker airbrush again. I'm just doing it for you guys because the face did come out a little too light. Let's say you want to darken it up a little bit, you can do that. Maybe tone it down a little bit, maybe on his cheek side, on the other side of his face, maybe right where the eyes are. Let's see if I get the eyes. Oh, I got the top of his head. And you can go in there and darken some of that if you need to. So if you see certain areas that you don't like I want to go over his leg because I think that would get a little darker even though we did highlights. Where the pant leg hits, I want to put a little darker because I don't want that going right to light. You know, you could do little things here and there underneath his breasts. Add a little more. Maybe in the middle here, I want to emphasize that a little bit more. Underneath his arms. Maybe I feel like that needs to be emphasized a little bit more. Go for what you feel you need to do. I'm gonna clean this airbrush now, and the way I do that is I just do it by putting my finger over this and popping it back up and spray it out. So what I'm doing while it's in the water like this, and I'm just pulling everything back, and then I take this piece off, clean the needle, put the needle back in, get my custom mean green and alcohol airbrush cleaner in here. The way I like to do things, I don't know if it's the correct way, it's just the way I do them, and it's always worked for me. Alright, pull out the needle, clean the needle again. Now I do not have running water in my office, so I have water bottles. What I'm going to do is dump this and get a fresh thing of water. Dump this out. Yeah, I recycle my bottles. Pour that in there for a rinse. Gook out of there, put it back. Pour some more water back in there. The airbrush. And make sure it's getting clean. Alright. Seems pretty clean. Now we'll clean the tip. Put that back in. Look down the tube here, and it looks pretty clean. That looks pretty clean. Put this off to the side. Get this. You see there's buildup in there. You don't want buildup in there. And just clean around that until it becomes shiny again. Put it back on, and the airbrush is clean and ready to go for the next time. Alright, so that's it for this episode of 3D Paint. It's just showing you the basics of airbrushing and how neat you can make your models look with very little effort. I mean, as you can see, he's, coming along really well. It's a lot easier using an airbrush to get that smooth kind of skin tone. Check me out next week and I'll show you how to finish off this model, and we might be doing a little bit more airbrushing on the pants. I'm probably going to go with the traditional purple because I like that. Do some hand painting and getting the eyes, the teeth, the mouth, getting everything kind of situated in that aspect. If this helped you guys, make sure you like and subscribe, and remember to stay creative.
Yeah. Please tell me that I can't, that I won't, that I fail, that I'll never make it out, yeah. Please tell me all the bad, never good, fill my head full of every single doubt, yeah. Please say any negative thoughts, I pop off when I hear people say I cannot. I get off to the thought of proving everyone wrong, I won't stop to the top, so you better back off and get lost. I'ma stay loud, stay proud, never running out, never heading south. I'll be spreading out, call it word of mouth, can't put me down, I'll be getting loud. You can